when the majority of people talk about resource efficiency, what they are thinking about is a whole bunch of people living in rich countries with 1 or 2 cars, several pairs of shoes in their cupboards, lots of clothes, some of which they don't use, at least 1 cell phone, permanent connectivity to broadband in one way or another. And when you add all that up, all of those consumers are basically consuming 80% of the world's resources. And they're 20% of the population. So what happens to the other 80%? Well, about half of that other 80% are living in poverty and are effectively slowly dying. Let's not use the word poverty, it's too abstract. Let's think of suffering, because you simply don't have enough to live a decent life. Access to a toilet, for example. There are more people with cell phones in the world than with access to a toilet. So what do you mean by resource efficiency when you're talking to a group of people, like I often do, who are living in shacks, informal settlements that they have illegally occupied and are trying to cobble together their own lives? What does resource efficiency mean to them? Must they consume less? You're not going to get might not be able to get back into that community if that's what you say. So they want to, basically getting out of poverty means consuming more. Yeah. But how can you do that? If it means saying to them, well, you're all going to live like people in London or Paris, and if they believe that, and if it's possible even, then there's very little chance that the planet is going to be able to sustain, with its current resource base, everybody living like the average person in Paris or London. So you have to reinvent development. You have to say to people who've got too much, you are going to have less over the next 20, 30, 40 years. And to those who don't have enough, you're going to have to say, well, it might not be what it looks like in a Hollywood movie. Now, on the one hand, the people who haven't got enough to say, well, it's our right to develop, which is what the Chinese say. Develop with a capital D. Old definition of development. I want to be like a California. And the people living in Europe already think they're in trouble with the recession. And there are enough people unemployed. What do you mean we must do with less? Yeah. So it's very difficult to think of what the common interest is. What I was trying to argue is that the common interest lies in the fact that neither group is going to benefit from the depletion of the resources that we need, because prices are going to go up, but more importantly, prices are going to get very volatile. There's going to be ups and downs. Economists talk about supply being inelastic. What that means is demand can go up and down, but supply only slowly increases. And prices go crazy. And nobody benefits from that except the hedge funds who are betting on those prices going up and down. They make billions out of betting on our misery. And that can't be a good way to run the globe. I would like to dream about the possibility that we could globally negotiate some kind of agreement on how, as a species, we are going to use and deploy the resources that we have left. And strictly speaking, these are not our resources. These are in the earth. We should actually be getting around and saying, well, we've basically ransacked the planet over the last 200, 300 years. And if we want to be around for another 100 years or more, we can't continue to do that. Now that's a very idealistic thing to say. So we try to do that with carbon, and we can't agree on carbon. Okay, we're trying to do that with biodiversity. We can't agree on that either. We've had some successes, like the ozone layer, like the law of the sea, There are like biosphere reserves, like wetlands. We have international agreements which do work, that protect resources. So you could say, well, why not? But things might have to get a bit worse before we come to our senses. But I think the problem is richer people will be able to buy themselves a lifeboat. So it's lifeboat ethics versus the ethics of the commons. That's really the choice that faces us. Cities are becoming interesting because cities are feeling the pinch first. Can be reflected in disruptions in food supplies, problems in getting cheap fossil fuels. Water supplies is probably going to be one of the biggest threats to cities in the future. Not all cities, but some cities have got too much water. But cities are interesting because they have the potential. There's enough evidence that you can get people organized around my city.
Yeah.
You can say, I'm a Londoner, I'm a Joburger, I live in Rio, and you can say, well, there's some kind of affinity, some kind of connectivity to that. Well, because I share this city with others, and when I use the name of my city, when I say I'm a Cape Townian, I know there's a whole bunch of others who are different to me who say the same thing. So maybe we can talk to each other about where's this city going to be in 30 years' time. We have a real advantage in African cities, which is the fact that we haven't sunk in concrete the technologies that have brought us as a species, a planetary species, to a point of crisis. We still have to do all that.
Yeah.
So now you can easily ask the question, how are we going to do that? What kind of systems are we going to build? If you look at Kenya, Kenya has the highest percentage of the population who use solar in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. That doesn't mean that solar is the majority supply of energy. It's just that most Kenyans are connected to a grid that doesn't work very well. So they have solar to back up. The result is that there are, as a percentage of the total population in Kenya, there are more people who are familiar with solar than in any other society. And that's just another example.